Hello and welcome dear friends at Lit ECT YouTube channel in another exciting session of most important MCQs made keeping in mind especially coming exams. And in today's topic we will deal with 20 questions taken from formalism theory and especially Russian formalism. So without wasting any more time, here is our first question. Which of the following paradigms is or are the one that differentiate the approaches of New Criticism and Russian formalism? Dear friends, both these approaches have some common or similar point of views like importance of text, but they out of these four options there is one which is not common, which differentiate these two approaches. So is it emphasis on text in hand? Second one is organic structure of a text. Third one is futility of paraphrasing, and the last one is moralistic tendency. Now, out of these four, there is one particular approach which is not found in one of these two. In fact, let me tell you, which is found in New Criticism and not in New Russian formalism or formalism. And that, dear friend, is these are the options. Okay, on first and fourth, first and third, first, second and fourth, I have already made you clear that it is the last one. And the moralistic tendency, if we look at certain new critics, though not all new critics have this particular moralistic tendency in their approach, but yes, still we can see that new critics wants the works to have some moralistic purpose. But for formalism, a text is text. There is nothing we can say a moral or something like that to be found in a text. Our second question, dear friend, is the development of Russian formalism is generally presented with a series of metaphors indicating its emphasis on a particular textual model. Which among these is not one of the metaphors used? Actually, what the question want to ask is that generally this gradual development of formalism is presented with a particular metaphor. So is it form, machine, organism or system? Now these are different terms, or we can say system metaphors, which are used to designate a different phase of formalism. Out of these, the correct answer, which is not used to indicate a particular phase of formalism, is form. Yes, though the name is formalism, but the three metaphors are machine, organism and system, which shows three different phases of formalism, how it evolved. Dear friends, next question is, a formalist critic sees a poet essentially similar to a in his or her approach to the work. Now you have to fill this blank. What is their analogy for a poet? Is a poet a visionary, a foreman, a scientist, or a philosopher? Now we see that right from the beginning of criticism, history of literary criticism, different literary critics have tried to compare or put an analogy between a poet or writer and something else. For example, we find that writers like Sidney or Shelley, they see a poet as a visionary, while there are some other poets, there are other critics who treat him equal to a scientist, some equate him with a philosopher. But dear friends, once again I must put this emphasis that for formalist critics or theorists, he is or she is no more than a foreman with certain tools to do his work or her work. So yes, formalist critic compare a poet with a foreman. Which of the following approaches to the canonical works of literature cannot be considered as formalist? Here we will see certain approaches and you have to find out which is not according to formalist, or we can say which is not a particular formalist approach. So, is it while we are reading Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy as a novel about the predicament of unorthodox hero in an orthodox society? Second one is reading Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens as a Bildungs Roman with emphasis on the role of society and upbringing. Third is reading Frankenstein by Mary Shelley as a prototype of science fiction with an ironical take on utopian fiction. And the last one is reading Tristram Shandy as an ironical take on the convention of the novel itself. Now, these four options present different approaches. The options are first and third, second and fourth, first, second and third, only second and third. Dear friends, the fourth option, reading Tristram Shandy as an ironical take on the conventions of novel, is actually a formalist reading. This is what formalists do. They read a text according to forms, conventions, rules, and find out how a work becomes literature. The first three options are actually not formalist but rather social or different other approaches. So the correct answer is first, second, and third. They are not formalist approaches. The Theory of Formal Method is one of the foundation books that established the school of Russian formalism. So it is very important text and you have to find out who is the writer. Is it Boris Eikhenbaum? Is it Yuri Tainanov? Or is it Peter Bogatrev? Or is it Roman Jakobson? Russian names, so you may find some difficulty in pronouncing them, but if you look at, and there is many options where you can find the correct option for these. The formal method is important text and it was penned by the initial writer who was one of the group of the early formalist Boris Eikhenbaum. Given below are two statements identified as an assertion and a reason behind it. Now you have to find out the correct choice. So assertion is formalist theory is based on opposition between habituation and perception. And the reason is formalists considered art as a way of breaking through the deadening and mechanical habits of conduct. The language maybe seems to be quite formal, but this is how questions are asked in NTA. So the options are both A and R are true, but R is not correct reason for A. Both A and R are true and R is correct reason for A. Only A is true or only reason is true. Dear friends, really it happens that formalist theory is based on this opposition between habituation. When we form a habit, when we become blind to peculiarities of a text, and perception, we don't consider it to be a literary work. And the reason is that formalist critics believe that art is process of defamiliarization, how we break through, how we go away from the mechanical habits of conduct. So both are correct, and yes, R is correct reason for A. Which of the following statement or statements regarding defamiliarization is true? First is, it sees literature as a distinguished from other verbal modes. The element of a literary work that create defamiliarization are in hierarchical order, higher than those that promote the plot. Rather than as continuous tradition, defamiliarization considers literary history as a series of ruptures from the past. Dear friends, it is actually, if we look at these three statements, all of these three statements present the basic hypothesis of defamiliarization. First, literature is different from verbal modes because it creates a defamiliarization. It has a shock value, surprising value. Second, those elements that create defamiliarization, they are actually literary rather than those conventional elements. So yes, they are higher in hierarchical order. And yes, there is not, no, we can say not a constant history going through, but rather jolts, rather breaks from the past. So yes, the correct answer is all of the above statements are correct regarding defamiliarization. According to Shklovsky, which is the most typical novel in world literature because it is the most novelistic of all novels. So high praise by Victor Shklovsky while he is discussing about defamiliarization. He pinpoint this particular novel. So the options are Tristram Shandy, Gulliver Travels, Oliver Twist, and Huckleberry Finn. All are, we can say, the canonical text, and many critics have put their focus, their critical lens on these works. But according to Shklovsky, it is Tristram Shandy by Lawrence Sterne, which is most novelistic because it doesn't follow any convention, any habitualization, and creates all sort of defamiliarization for the reader. Match the two columns presenting a book or essay and the writer. Very important, dear friends, all these works and essays, please go and read about them also. So on left side we have the making of Gogol's overcoat, the theory of prose, the problem of Skaz in stylistics, and epic and novel. All these contributed in the development of formalist theory. So options are, writer are Victor Shklovsky, Boris Eikhenbaum, V.V. Vinogradov, and Mikhail Bakhtin. And so these are the option. Okay, let me help you with this and making here are, so basically making of Gogol's overcoat. Remember, it is a very popular work by Boris Eikhenbaum. Theory of prose. You may be, get difficulty in identifying this, but epic and novel, it is very clear by Mikhail Bakhtin. So you can see the first Q and fourth S. It is only one available option is this one, B. So other are theory of prose is by Shklovsky and problems of Skaz and stylistics is by V.V. Vinogradov. Thesis on language. Transform the evolutionary approach of formalism into a structuralist approach. Who was or who were the writer or writers of this groundbreaking work? Roman Jakobson, Yuri Tainov, Boris Eikhenbaum, or Boris Tomaszewski. So it is, dear friends, a work written in collaboration by these two very important contributor to the theory of both formalism and structuralism, Roman Jakobson and Yuri Tainov. So it is P and Q. In his theory of literature, Boris Tomaszewski gives the concept of defining it as the gathering of the characters into groups and the agreement of each group upon the tactics which are to be used against the other. So it is a formalistic device in which different characters are formed into groups and they are counterpoised against each other. So is it intrigue, motivation, or sujet, or plot, or thematics? Actually, Boris Tomaszewski called this concept intrigue, in which different characters are placed in opposition to each other so that a kind of tension is created in the work. Once again, the question about assertion and reason given below, two statements, and you have to find out the relationship between them. The same device may have different aesthetic functions in different works or may become total automatized. The aesthetic function is dynamic and is defined by literary and non-literary conventions of a particular era. So options are once again the similar. A and R are true. R is not a correct reason for A. A and R are true. R is correct reason for A. Only A is true. Only R is true. Dear friends, it is clear that aesthetic function is dynamic. So this means that different aesthetic functions may become work according to their particular function in a work, or they may not work, they may not be treated as aesthetic function. So what is basically how an aesthetic function works? It is defined by the literary or non-literary convention of a particular era, which is the reason that they may have different values in a work. Authorial speech, the speeches of narrators, inserted genres, the speech of characters, each of them permits a multiplicity of social voices and a wide variety of their links and interrelationships. This is the definition given by Mikhail Bakhtin to one of his most popular concepts. Which one is it? Is it heteroglossia, chronotop, carnival, or heteroglossia and carnival? Both are defined in these lines, as I hope you have read this. If still not, please go through deeply to the theories presented by Mikhail Bakhtin. He is one of the most important theorists of 30s, 40s and 50s, and even later theorists are deeply influenced by his theories. And you can be sure that a question either directly or indirectly from Bakhtin is bound to come. The present answer for this is heteroglossia. Which of the following genres, as per Bakhtin, allows a dialogic worldview without curbing their expressive capacities? So allowing more than one voice, a dialogic imagination in which not only the narrator or writer but characters can also express their point of view. Such is lyric, epic, tragedy or comedy. Bakhtin rejects all first three because he says there is no scope of dialogic worldview in first three. It is only comedy which allows this multiple point of views. The term Bakhtin uses for the analysis of language and literature involving the body, often disgusting bodily imagery to create humorous and shocking effects. It is defined in his theory of carnival, and the term he uses: polyphonic humor, grotesque realism, licensing humor, or inverted realism. Dear friends, yes, polyphonic humor he uses, but not in this particular context. It is the grotesque realism, which is a sort of oxymoron in which grotesque or we can say vulgar or shocking images are presented in a very realistic manner. Which of the following statement is or are applicable to the Bakhtin's concepts of carnivals? First, Bakhtin developed this concept in his book Rebellion and His World. Second, carnival occurs whenever genuine laughter challenges the centripetal values of existing norms. Third, the carnival creates the threshold situation where regular conventions are mocked through crudity, scatological humor, violence, and vulgar insults. Dear friends, according to his concept of carnival, everything is turned upside down, and we can say conventions are upturned, and those that are high, they are mocked, and those who are who are totally crushed, they are elevated. So all these three apply to the theory of carnivals. So yes, all of the above is the correct answer. Which among the following essays by Bakhtin is not a part of the book The Dialogic Imagination? Dear friend, Dialogic Imagination is one of path-breaking work of literary theory in the 20th century. Bakhtin has written this book which consists of 4 essays. One among these is not of them epic and novel from the prehistory of novelistic discourse and discourse in the novel. These 3 are the popular ones. Yes, towards the philosophy of the act. It is written by Bakhtin but not in this book, The Dialogic Imagination. Marlowe, the famous character from Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. He is an example of extradiegetic narrator, intradiegetic narrator, omniscient narrator, or narrative. These are different types of narrators given in theories presented by Janet and other writers. And extradiegetic narrator is narrator who is not involved in the story directly. Intradiegetic is one who is the part of the story. Omniscient narrator, one who knows everything about all the characters. And actually narrative is not related to this particular concept, but rather to whom this narration is told. So Marlowe, we know, is part of the plot. He is very much involved in the story, so he is an intradiegetic narrator. If voice in narrative discourse is term for who is speaking, then what is the term for who is perceiving? So we can say there are two ends, one who speaks and that is called voice, and the second is one who receives or perceives. Now there are different terms, but we are particularly talking about the term related with narrative discourse. Is it aspect, point of view, focalization, or narration? Dear friends, it is a rather important concept, and remember this. Voice is complementary to focalization. Focalization is the focus of the voice on who is perceiving. And then we come to the last question of this session. Which of the following novelists, according to Wayne C. Booth, initiated the fashion for less intrusive narrators? Gustav Flaubert, Henry James, Henry Fielding, or Franz Kafka? All are important writers, but one who actually started this fashion of leaving something to the characters or to the reader and making narrator less intrusive in the plot is Gustav Flaubert, who in his novels like Madame Bovary has given some very important and we can say a postmodernistic approach. Okay, dear friends, that was all in our today's session about questions on formalism and narrative theory. Please keep stays and supporting this channel. We will soon come back with more videos, more quizzes, more MCQs that will help you definitely in getting your goal of clearing NET. Thank you, dear friends.